welcome back, everyone. We are on podcast episode 2. Maya, how you feeling about the second episode?
Feeling great. I feel like we got some good views on our podcast with Nay, and I can't wait for our next guest.
Yes, we've learned a little bit from our first one. We're still new at this, so bear with us, but I'm really excited. I think definitely to start, we are using our Stanford network. So without giving away our next guest, Maya, why don't you intro who we're interviewing today?
Okay, so today we have one of our very close friends, Kennedy Wesley, on the podcast. Hey, Ken.
Hey guys, I'm excited.
Woo woo.
Welcome, Ken.
I bet most of you know Kennedy already, or many of the people who follow women's soccer, female footballers. Ken's also a mentor for female footballers. But Kennedy Wesley is from Orange County, and she grew up playing for SoCal Blues and Slammers. Some of her very big accolades include winning Gatorade Player of the Year in 2017. She played through the whole youth national team system with U.S. Soccer from U14s to U23s. She won a national championship with Stanford in 2019, also captain for Stanford for 2 years. And then for her professional career, she was the 12th overall pick in the 2024 NWSL draft, going to the San Diego Wave, which is very close to home for her, where she also played with Sierra for a year and a half.
Yeah.
And then, now she is a solid starter for the team. And one of her most recent achievements was winning NWSL Rookie of the Month last September. So, where are you signing on from today, and what was the highlight of your day? I know it's still the morning, but
That's a great question. I am signing on from a coffee shop outside in what's usually sunny San Diego, but not so sunny. And the highlight of my day so far was honestly the coffee I made myself this morning. I have an espresso and a milk frother, and I think I nailed it today. It was great.
What's coffee number 2? What are you drinking now?
Coffee number 2 is actually a matcha, just a matcha latte, almond milk, plain and simple. But yeah, 2 drinks for sure.
Gotta be 2 drinks.
I don't know if you guys know, but in Italy, they drink a shot of espresso after every meal, even dinner. It's a tradition here. And if you drink it before your food, you're weird. Because I've done that, and people are like, what the heck? They're like, are you really asking for a coffee right now?
I feel like
Wait.
it's hard at night. Like, do people, are they just immune to the caffeine?
I think so, because they here they drink just straight espresso. Like sometimes they'll do cappuccinos, but you can't get a cappuccino after 11 a.m. or else that's against the rules.
Wow.
Wait, can you go to a coffee shop and order a cappuccino after 11, or it's just like you're not supposed to do that?
Yeah, it's an unspoken rule.
Okay, it's the local thing.
Noted.
Wow.
Okay, jumping into our questions. So first, we kind of want to start from the beginning or more early years of your career, if you can remember those. But I don't know if a lot of people know, but you were actually a part of 2 under 17 World Cup cycles, and the first one you were playing up a couple age groups and getting international experience at a pretty young age. And my first question for you about that is, did you feel a lot of pressure being one of the youngest on the team, and how did you deal with those nerves, or what helped you through navigating a World Cup cycle, knowing that you were on the younger side?
Yeah, I think it definitely at first was a little bit intimidating. I mean, looking at some of the players that were in that cycle are some of the like best players in the world right now. So looking back, it was definitely intimidating at first, but I think overall I kind of went in with the mindset of that it was a great opportunity, and not only to just compete on the international stage, but to learn so much from the girls above me. So I think going in it with that mentality of trying to soak as much in from the older players and the staff as I could made it a little bit easier. And I think took off some of the pressure that a World Cup cycle can bring. So I feel like overall I was just trying to play without fear, not being super worried about making mistakes, and trying to soak it all in as much as I could.
And I mean, you like played a lot. And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but you started in a lot of those games and you were playing up 2 cycles. Like, that's a big jump. And especially in your position as a center back, I don't know if you're playing outside back maybe, but anyways, as a defender, like to be playing with girls that are, 2 to 3 years older than you and coming in and like earning a starting role. Were there anything that you consciously were doing in that situation, or how you kind of navigated? Because that's a lot of pressure, especially being, you were 15, 14 at the time playing with 16, 17-year-olds. Like that's a big gap.
Yeah, no, I that totally makes sense. I think one of the biggest things that I feel like helped prepare me for that environment was that my club environment was very similar. From when I can remember starting club, I started playing with girls that were 2 years older. So in terms of like athleticism and physicality, I felt like I was always trying to get a little bit increase those areas so that I could keep up with the girls I was training and playing with all the time. So I think that prepared me really well for that opportunity when it arose. But yeah, I think that obviously there were times where I was like, I don't think I necessarily deserve to be here, or might not have deserved that opportunity, but I just tried to focus on whenever it was given to take advantage of it and make the best I could out of it. But I think, yeah, my club environment, having always played with girls older than me, definitely helped a ton and translated over.
Yeah, that makes sense. And was it hard socially though? Like, did you feel left out at times?
Yeah, I think socially, it definitely was a little weird. I'm trying to think, I was maybe in 8th grade going into 9th grade at the time, and some girls were sophomores in high school and starting to think about college, whereas I was definitely not in that position. So socially it was a little hard. I was lucky enough that there were a couple girls my age that kind of fluctuated in and out of the cycle. That made it really nice to have a couple closer friends definitely throughout the process. But I think it also helped me grow up a little bit faster. I think being around older players all the time, like at home and at camp, it kind of sped up my maturity process, I guess, in a sense, and definitely prepared me for college and all that going forward.
I guess going off of that, more of like the soccer aspect, I kind of want to change routes and go more towards like the school aspect of growing up and playing for the youth national teams. But I know you went to like kind of a smaller school growing up, that I think you went from kindergarten through 12th grade. I mean, you were doing something that probably no one else at your school was doing, and missing a lot of school. But how did you manage missing a ton of school and staying on top of your academics, especially in order to set you up to go to a good college like Stanford? And what kind of strategies did you have to use to be able to manage that?
Yeah, I think, like you had said, communication was the biggest and the thing I had to learn really early on. Not only just like communicating with teachers about times that I might miss, but also trying to problem solve and figure out ways to make up for whether it was in person tests or in person projects. It definitely became a little tricky, and I was fortunate enough going to a really small school that they haven't really had students miss a lot of school for prolonged periods of time. So I was a little bit of a test dummy in a sense, but I think they were super accommodating and easy to work with. I know that's not the case everywhere, so I'm super thankful for that. But yeah, I'd say the communication early on, trying to stay ahead of assignments when I could, whether it was turning in things before I left or as soon as I was getting back from camps, or a lot of the times it was taking tests during camps with like a proctor and things like that. You definitely had to get a little bit creative, and I wouldn't say it's a normal person that a lot of kids find themselves in like 8th to 10th grade. But yeah, it definitely took a lot of communication, time management, figuring out when I had blocks of times during camp to do work. Because for me and my parents echoed it all the time that that was always a priority. And if school ever started to fluctuate or slip a little bit, that was when I kind of had to refocus and get my priorities right with school. So it was definitely challenging, but definitely not something that I couldn't make work at the time for sure.
It's interesting too because you went to such a small school, and I can relate a little bit because I also went to a really small high school. But like when your school isn't necessarily known for sports, I feel like sometimes it can be really hard because you're doing things that people don't really understand. Like they're like, "Why are you missing school and why can't you come to, like homecoming and prom and all these things?" And so, what was your experience like around that? And did you find it hard to be at a school that's like not so focused on sport and be that athlete in that environment?
Yeah, I think it's definitely something that over time only my really like close friends to understand because yeah, I would miss pretty much every school dance or a Friday night football game because I was gone for camp or I had a soccer game early Saturday morning. So all of those little things I think when you're young can start to add up and you feel like is it really worth it? Is it worth missing out on all these social things that all my friends are getting to go to? But I think one of the biggest things I always tried to stay focused on, and my parents were a big help in that, was that it will pay off eventually. And I was fortunate enough to go to college and now continue my playing career. So I think I'm kind of seeing it all in fruition right now. But at the time, it's hard to really make those decisions and be willing to sacrifice in some areas, especially when people don't really understand why it's happening and still might not. But I definitely think my close circle kind of understood and I'm still super close with them. So that was really helpful.
And when there's still times now in your career, or, I mean, I'm sure we all feel this and definitely felt this more when you're in high school and trying to figure yourself out. But like when there's those events and you say no and you're like, dang, like that one hurts to say no to. I really wish I could have gone to that. Like, are there things that you kind of do or like a process that you go through to help make you feel better about that? Because I think it's easy to be like, oh, well, maybe this will pay off eventually. And like, I love the sport, but there's some moments where you're like, dang, that sucks that I couldn't go to that. Like, how do you deal with that feeling even now?
Yeah, I think too, yeah, I was gonna say it's even present today. And I think it makes it especially hard when soccer might not be going well, but you still have to choose to show up and do it and make those decisions because you're, I don't know, making soccer priority, I guess, or now I guess we're employed and that's what we have to do. But um I feel like I would always try if I had to say no to something that I was really looking forward to or something that I really wanted to do, trying to then figure out, okay, I can't do this, but maybe in a week or 2 weeks' time, I might have something else that I can look forward to and commit to doing. Of almost supplementing some of the harder things to miss with something else that I might be able to look forward to, I feel like was a big thing. And I think, again, I can credit my parents to that a lot too, where they recognized that it was hard for me to make that decision, but they would maybe help facilitate, well, why don't you go do this with your friends next week instead? Or maybe you can do XYZ. So I think trying to supplement and find time when it does permit itself is really helpful in those difficult situations.
That's really good thinking and advice. I think that's super helpful.
Switching gears, now we're going to start talking more about your injury history. You have, I feel like, a pretty long list. Some that were more serious than others, but a lot that have kept you maybe out of eligibility to play or with a lot of pain. But so Kennedy you've torn your ACL once, and you've also torn your shoulder labrum, right?
Yeah,
Okay. I think those are like the major ones that you got surgeries for. But through both of those recoveries, or maybe if you want to focus on whichever one was the hardest for you, what did you feel were the hardest moments going through either or both of those injuries?
Yeah, I definitely say my ACL in terms of not just like length of recovery, but also the timing of it was probably the most difficult for me. I tore it in kind of the middle of or towards the beginning, middle of my senior year of high school. So it was right before going to college. I had already known at the time, like I was going to Stanford, I was committed and all of that. And I was going to go early in the summertime to start training and do classes ahead of time. So I think having that injury at that time was just in my head, like probably the worst time possible. I felt like I wouldn't be prepared going to school. I was on the edge of potentially going to like another Youth World Cup, and that kind of got taken away. In my head, the timing just seemed all wrong, as all injuries, I'm sure, are. And it was definitely really challenging physically, mentally. I had to do a lot of work in rehab and return to play and all of that stuff to get myself set up for a good position going into my freshman year at school. But I will say that one of the kind of bright spots in the whole journey was that growing up, I obviously was committed and gone all the time for soccer. So to have that stripped away was obviously really hard, but to have a little bit more free time to actually be like a normal person was something that I found really enjoyable. I was able to go to those school dances because I wasn't missing for camp, or able to do just the little things, going to football games on Friday nights and things like that because I was in a little bit of a different position. While it was super hard, both like mentally and physically, being able to find bright spots and kind of having that so-called normal high school student life was really nice. But yeah, definitely not something that anyone can predict or really anticipate for sure.
And with your ACL, I think it's really interesting too, because obviously, I mean, with any injury, there's like a phase where you can be doing a lot of things, but then there's also a phase where like rest is the most important. And honestly, probably for like your best recovery, specifically your mental recovery, like it is important to go out and do those things. But I think as athletes, we like have in this like this mindset of like, if I'm not doing anything, I'm not getting better and I'm not helping myself get back to where I'm like supposed to be. Did you feel that? And like if you did, kind of how did you balance that, especially in the early stages where you're like, oh, I can go to this dance, but I like can't really do anything to help my knee get better in this current moment, or I can't do anything that feels significant.
Yeah, I think that was one of the biggest things I felt from the beginning because I feel like I could speak for all of us. You kind of go nonstop from when you start club soccer to your moment going off to college. Like it's kind of a continuous thing to finally have a time where I legitimately could not do things and had to actually rest was kind of a hard pill to swallow, I think, at first. But I feel like, yeah, I feel like one of the biggest things with that sort of mindset and mentality and kind of having to switch it was that it's almost like not like a wake up call, but kind of a like, there is so much more to life than just this sport. And rest might be your best friend in the moment, or there might be times where you might not be making as much progress as you'd like, or it doesn't feel like you're making as much progress as you'd like. But I think taking a step back and realizing that that's okay and that it is going to work itself out and you can find other joys in the meantime, I think was a really big lesson for myself. Finding out other things I like to do outside of soccer because that wasn't really a chance for me was really good. But yeah, it's definitely really hard to kind of swallow that pill that okay, actually doing nothing and resting is a good thing, but it's really hard, especially when you're a little bit younger in life for sure.
I think something that just over the years playing with you and all the injuries that you've gone through, something so admirable about you is that when you are injured, you really are super selfless. I feel like you don't make it about yourself. And I feel like that's not super common. So just a little shout out for you, you know?
Oh my gosh, thanks.
But yeah, last question regarding your injuries. I feel like even though you've had those 2 major injuries that have required you to be maybe out for a while and required surgery, I feel like you've also had a ton of mini injuries, I'd say, that are still super painful. Like I remember you broke your nose in a game and you had to wear like a Batman mask, and just with your shoulder before you decided to get surgery, your shoulder would literally dislocate maybe every other game one season, and Justin, our trainer, would have to pop it back in. So those aren't easy injuries either. Like being able to play with those, being able to play still, but like playing with pain. So my question is like, how did you go into those games with those type of injuries where you're still able to play, but that comes with a lot of pain? Like how were you able to mentally prepare for that?
Yeah, I feel like that's hard. I would say that I have always had like a really high pain tolerance, so it would it would have to be really bad, really, really bad for me to ever sit out. And I would not say that that's like the best mindset at all, but that's how kind of I navigated a lot of things. And it was a slippery slope because I feel like a lot of the times you could say, are you, the phrase that I feel like, I don't remember, it might have been Justin. Someone used to say, like, are you hurt or are you injured? And so, like, trying to figure out that line of, okay, like maybe my shoulder is actually injured and it does keep doing all this weird stuff, but I'm still able to physically run around out on the field and do my job, maybe not to the best of my ability, but still do it for the sake of my teammates and to kind of, I guess, fulfill my job in a sense. And I think that that was one of the biggest things that kept me motivated and allowed me to continue to push through it, was that it was ultimately for the sake of the team. And I just wanted to put us in the best position possible. So if that meant I was like running around with like half a body, like I would do it. And I still think that'll always stick with me forever. So definitely it is important to realize what is too much, but I definitely always teeter the line of pushing my limits a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, one of my like favorite memories of Ken is when she literally put her shoulder back in after it was dislocated, like by leaning against the goalpost. I'm like, Ken, what the heck?
Yeah,
But
that was a lot.
yeah, I mean, just to like conclude here, because I do think what you said is like it's so hard, and especially when trainers or people are asking you those questions like, okay, are you hurt or are you injured? And a lot of times, like, you don't really know. You're like, "Oh, I feel this thing, but, like, how do I know if it's serious, if it's not?" And I think, like, I've been talking to this one girl who's coming back from an ACL injury, and she's like, "I feel these things, and I, like, don't know if I should keep pushing or if I should, stop," or like, and obviously you said it yourself, like, you teeter on the line of probably pushing it too much, but you're still, like, asking yourself these questions, like, what's kind of your process is, 'cause there have been times where you're like, "I can't do this anymore." Like, how do you navigate figuring out what those feelings in your body are and, like, really understanding what it is?
It's hard. Yeah, I feel like that's a really good question and something I'm still like figuring out. But I think one of the biggest things, especially like early on, maybe I started to develop it with like playing a couple sports and things like that. But being able to push through and to continue through something like through discomfort or through a little bit of pain. It might sound like a little ironic or borderline crazy. I don't know. But I think your body has to somehow figure out how to push through things and push through discomfort. Again, that comes with like a really fine line because you would rather not push yourself to your breaking point where you just like can't do it anymore. You kind of want to try and find the balance. But I think exposing yourself to a little bit of discomfort is like totally healthy as long as it's done in a healthy, safe way. But um, I'd say, like, as a piece of advice, being over communicative with coaches, trainers of how your body is doing and not just relying it all being on yourself, but kind of keeping that line of communication really open, really honest, and transparent so that they can also help you navigate the situation. There might be times where they ask you questions and you might not know, but the more comfortable you are and transparent you have been in the past, I think will ultimately help make the decision that's best for you, best for the team, and everyone kind of walks away in a good situation.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what because in talking about this, I was like, I think it's so important to be a curious athlete too, in your recovery and your injury and all these things, and not just, you go to the doctor for an image and they say this is what it is, but like asking those questions and understanding, like, oh, I feel this. What is that? Like, what part of my body is that? Because I think it can help you to be more comfortable. And I do think, like, me and Ken and we played with Alex Morgan. Hopefully she's listening. That would be awesome if she is. But she, like, I remember, like, she would literally get hurt and then she'd be like, "Oh, I already know what this is." And then she would go get imaging and it would just confirm what it was. But like, she knew her body so well from all of her years of playing and asking questions. And so I think it's just like a really good message for our listeners to take, is like, be a patient that asks questions and really wants to understand what's going on with your body, because I think the more that you know, and like as you grow in the game, the more you'll know your own body and the injuries that pop up, kind of the smarter you can be about returning and navigating the line of playing through injury versus just playing through pain. Um,
Yeah, definitely.
so yeah, that's really helpful, and Ken's a great one to ask about that.
Are you a coach or parent struggling to help your player find confidence or move past mistakes? If so, check out our mental performance opportunities at Female Footballers. We offer team and club sessions for athletes ages 10 and up, and we have an individual virtual mentorship program where players can chat weekly with a pro or college player alongside our research based mental skills curriculum. For more information, please go to www.femalefootballers.org.
So now jumping to kind of where you are today, you're playing professionally. This is your second year in the league, in the NWSL, playing for the San Diego Wave. And your first year, you came in and absolutely crushed it. Obviously, the team didn't have a great your rookie season wasn't a great performance for the team, but for you individually, it was really strong. How did you navigate that jump from college soccer to now playing professionally, now that it's your job, and also once again jumping pretty quickly into a starting role with people that are older than you, more experienced than you, similar to your World Cup experience?
Yeah, I think it was definitely a tricky transition, but something that I think Stanford and like the college environment in terms of soccer and lifestyle prepared us like really well going into the next stage of life. Yeah, I went into the year kind of with no expectations, similar to when I was younger going into that youth national team stuff, but going in with the mindset of, okay, I'm like one of the younger players here. There are so many older talented players above me that I can learn from, and this is not an opportunity that everyone gets. So I was very much in the mindset of like be as open-minded, coachable, and like learn as much as I could. That was kind of those are my goals going into the season. So I think kind of setting that as a precedent was really helpful. Being fortunate enough to get an opportunity and a shot at playing is not something that I was planning on right away, but obviously everything, people get injured, things happen at the next level. So super fortunate that I was able to get the opportunity, but I think it caught me a little bit by surprise. The league itself being so much more athletic and physical, everything happens a lot faster. So I think those were things that our training environment set up really well so that when games came, I felt pretty prepared. But I'd say one of the biggest weird transitions was going from a college environment where you go to school, go to practice, go to class again, always having something to do or some place to be, to now going to training in the morning and doing what we need there, meetings, lift, treatment, and then having the rest of the day to just fill. And that is definitely, I'm still trying to navigate that, what to do to fill my time. I feel like I almost should be doing something, and I think Stanford wired us in a weird way like that. But overall, I think it's been such a fun transition and something that I'm really glad and that I pushed myself to do going out of college. But yeah, I'm enjoying it so far.
That kind of segues into what I was going to ask you next. I was going to ask, like, how you kind of enjoy yourself outside of soccer now that soccer's your quote unquote job. Just because in college you didn't have the choice to kind of do whatever you wanted after soccer was over. You had school, you had to study, you had tests maybe. And I mean, I still even kind of feel like either I get bored or I feel like I'm not being productive in a way. I think that's just how our brains were wired for 4 years straight. But yeah, I guess, do you ever have feelings kind of like that where you're maybe bored or don't know what to do with yourself, or you have thoughts of what should I be doing to kind of be productive? Or is there a healthy strategy that you use now that you're like, this is okay to not have anything because I've finished my job for the day and now I can just relax?
Yeah, I think honestly, kind of a little bit of everything you touched on. I think there are some days where I get home around 2 o'clock and I'm like, all right, I need to get another job. I need to do something. Like, again, that feeling of being productive. I need like a task to get done that's not cleaning my apartment. Like, I need something more tangible to do. So I think there are days that are like that. Um, there are days where I get home and I'm so exhausted and I'm like, thank goodness I have nothing else that I need to do today. Um, and there are other days where I want to do things that aren't like job or task oriented, like go to the beach or go get coffee. So I think I haven't really found that part of my life very routine yet. I still have days where I'm on LinkedIn or days where I'm going to walk at the beach. So I think keeping that variety for me has been like a little bit healthy. I'm not bored every day or find myself exhausted every single day. So having that bit of variety in my life has been nice. I definitely still think I could like get a part-time job or something, trying to figure that out. But overall, it is nice at the end of the day to not have as many tasks and responsibilities as we did in college, but definitely still getting used to that for sure.
Okay, so my last question, kind of going on to like a different topic related to pro life. I think in the NWSL especially, I feel like there's a lot of media, there's a lot of attention, there's a lot of pictures being taken all the time and pregame fits and stuff like that. And even nowadays on Instagram, there's a ton of soccer news profiles that they literally just kind of hop on anything, any information they can get and stuff. And I think we kind of talked about this with Nay a little bit in our last episode. And she talked about the way she stays kind of grounded and doesn't let outside opinions or things mess with her own head, or get in the way of how she maybe views herself. But do you feel that you deal with media attention in a healthy way, or how do you deal with that spotlight of being a professional athlete now, and especially the NWSL getting really big and having a lot of fans and people invested in the personal lives of you guys?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that anything like I've experienced, I guess, is probably on a much smaller scale, being super new to the league and kind of all of that. But ultimately, I feel like just in life in general, but especially in a soccer context, I try to kind of fly as under the radar as possible. So being in a new environment where there are fans and you have the opportunity to make an impact that way, or like you said, you can wear like a cool outfit before a game. I personally am not as much into that, but I think that I show my impact or show my appreciation, I guess, for the sport and the team in San Diego in other ways. So I try to focus on the ways that I can, whether it's getting involved in the community or signing autographs after games. I think the biggest thing for me is like putting my attention and focus and emphasis, I guess, in the ways that I want to, and kind of not disregarding all of the other outlets and forms, but kind of staying a little bit tunnel vision in terms of how I want my image to be perceived and who I can impact in that way. I guess that's a little different way to answer your question, but yeah, it can be hard at times, obviously. People online are mean sometimes, and it's just like you kind of have to, I think having a good sense of self and a good idea of who you are as a player and person and who your circle views you as is the most important thing at the end of the day, not some person that's just typing away on a screen that has no idea about you or anything like that. So it can be tricky, but definitely possible for sure to navigate.
When you do see a negative comment, because obviously you can do everything possible to protect yourself, but you do see it every once in a while. Like, what do you do? Do you have a process? Is there anything that you do when you're like, dang, that? Because it's still it hurts, even though you say all those things. You're like, dang, that sucks.
Yeah, it's so easy to say they have no idea what they're talking about. Like, who even is that person? But at the end of the day, like, words are still impactful no matter who they come from. So I feel like one of the biggest things that I try and do is just reiterate, like, that literally has like no value of who I actually am as a player, as a person. Whether or not like I think that might be true, I always try to ignore pretty much all of the external things that come. Obviously, it doesn't hurt when some of the things are nice, like, oh, that's great, but kind of keeping a level-headedness in terms of all external commentary has been a big focus of mine for sure.
That's similar to what Nay was saying too, of like you don't want to take positives or the negatives too seriously because these at the end of the day, like these people don't understand. They're looking at you in such a limited context,
Yeah,
which is such a good reminder.
yeah, for sure.
Ken, we could talk to you all day, but it's coming up for on at bedtime for Maya and I. We're
True.
no, but we have 3 questions that we're asking every guest so far. We've done it twice.
Okay.
But the first thing is, what are you most proud of? And it's intentionally vague, so it can be literally anything.
Ooh. Okay. I would say I I am most proud of all of the people in my life, that the people that I was brought up with, but also the people that I've allowed to enter my life, I guess, in a sense that ultimately it could matter, like everything, how life is going doesn't really matter, but I know I have like a circle of people that just make life better in whatever context that might be. So I'll go with the people.
I love that. Great. Okay, now, so Ken and I were roommates. So Ken, we've talked about skincare, all your all the routines you could possibly have, but walk us through right now, what is your nighttime routine and what is your morning routine?
Okay, I'll
Mouth
start
tape.
with, oh, yeah, obviously. So I'm on this mouth tape fix. Every night
Oh,
I brush my teeth, wash my face, put my serums on, lather it up, and then when I go in bed, I'm a horrible phone scroller before bed. I have to go on TikTok for at least 30 minutes before bed. Um,
30 minutes,
I know.
Ken!
Sorry, kids. Sorry, kids. Don't do that. Blue light's bad. Um, but do that, and then I put on my mouth tape. So literally, these little black strips of tape go over my mouth, and it's supposed to help you nose breathe more during sleep. So I'm convinced every time I have it on, I sleep better. And when I don't sleep as great. So
Interesting.
for anyone out there, it works. It's on TikTok Shop, it's on Amazon, anywhere. Nighttime, morning, usually wake if I wake up early enough, sometimes I'll read a little bit or do a little devotional of some sort, and then will brush my teeth, wash my face, skincare again. I'm an acne prone girly, so I really have to focus on the skincare, make my coffee, and then I'm usually out the door. So pretty basic, but yeah.
I love it though. Mouth tape. People swear by it. Maybe I need to get on the train.
Yeah, it's worth a shot, I'm telling you.
Okay, and then the last question is, what is your kind of like guilty pleasure TV show that you just have watched the most times? Whenever you don't know what to watch, you turn it on and you watch that.
Oh, it's a really good one. I think in terms of shows, it's gotta be either like New Girl, just in the background for some feel-good TV, or something like a Gossip Girl, the early seasons.
I know
But
your
my
movie.
all-time favorite movie, I think you know this,
I know it.
is Someone Great on Netflix.
Oh my
I
god.
that movie I've seen at least 20 times.
Okay, just one last thing, a note for our listeners out there. Something Great is actually a decent movie. I will say that. But Kennedy has historically given bad movie recommendations. So take it with a grain of salt.
Take it with a grain of salt. PG-13 probably, so make sure you look at that. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, Kennedy, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for being our second ever guest. It's
Thanks, Ken.
truly an honor.
Thank you guys for having me. This was so fun. It makes me want to like start a podcast or something.
Maybe that's what you need to be doing in your free time.
Maybe it's my calling. But no, thank you guys so much. And I'm so happy that I got to do this and I miss you guys.
I know.
Miss you.
Hopefully we can reunite soon. But
Yes.
Ken and everyone, please share this podcast with anyone who you think might enjoy it. Kennedy shared some really incredible things today that can definitely be helpful for so many listeners out there. So share, follow us on Instagram at Female Footballers, and then you can find our podcast, obviously, wherever you're listening right now, but Spotify or Apple